Hi, Detective Santiago, Magnet School alumna.
Well, I appreciate that you use the proper declension of alumnus.
Well, some say Latin is a dead language, but I say it's just taking a long nap.
In recent years, the cost of higher education has become ridiculous, and the idea of going to school to get a better job isn't viewed with the same optimism. With the assistance of Mothra, the bunny of data science, this video looks at the pressure to succeed. If you enjoy this type of content, like, subscribe, or visit Patreon. With that out of the way, let's continue. For those of us who grew up poor, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, it seemed like this message of going to college was everywhere. We heard it in school, we saw it in TV shows and movies, and often we heard it from our families and friends. Working in fast food or blue-collar jobs like being a plumber were not viewed as the type of jobs that smart kids should want. If someone is smart and decides to be an electrician, they must not be living up to their full potential. Clearly, they can't be happy in a job like that, right? One such example is the 1997 movie Good Will Hunting. The Professor Lambo has difficulty comprehending why Will would not want to pursue all the opportunities he tries to give him. Part of it is trauma in Will's past, but for this video I want to focus on this pressure to succeed. Not just succeed, but succeed in a particular way, and generally using that genius or intelligence in a way that benefits other people. The pressure to go to college isn't completely unfounded. I have older parents, so my parents are the age of most people's grandparents. When my parents were in school, less than 20% of men and 5% of women had 4 years of higher education or more. At that time, a degree had that possibility of opening doors and getting people out of poverty while the economy was mostly continuing to grow. When I finished undergrad near 2010, roughly 31% of men as well as 31% of women had a degree. Combine that with the issues in the economy in 2008, and a degree didn't have near the same value. Another aspect is that even without a high school education, there was still a possibility of getting a job during the 70s, whereas not having a GED or a high school education now severely limits your job options. Even some fast food restaurants and retail jobs require a minimum of high school education or GED. So historically, a degree could be possible job security. However, because more people in the US have a higher education than previous generations, it doesn't have that same stability. College will be further explored in another video. Often in media, college is touted as this get out of the trailer park card, but the reality is that unless you are lucky, are a certain type of genius, or manage to be in the right place at the right time, it doesn't really matter.
Sure there's enough plans to fill the order, though? Oh yeah, big time. Did all the calculations myself.
Uh-oh.
What?
Oh, no offense, Ricky, but you stopped going to math in grade 6.
It's not really math. Fucking 30,000 bottles, 1 gram per bottle is 30,000 grams, 454 grams in a pound, you need about 66 pounds, about a quarter pound per plant. 264 plants. We're gonna grow 350 just to be safe.
The first topic is the distinction between being smart versus being a genius. Let's go back to Good Will Hunting. Will grew up in poverty and lives in South Boston. Even though he's smart, it's the fact that he's specifically a genius that gets him noticed. Had Will's genius been in an area that was not visible at that school, or allowed him to solve the math problem, he likely would have continued his life as it was. It makes for a good story, but it creates this idea that in order to have that luck and opportunity to escape poverty, you can't just be smart, you have to be a genius.
3238466.
I can assure you our preschool is of the highest quality. Over 75% of our graduates go on to first grade.
Well, our little girl has a gift, and we're willing to do what it takes to help her.
Very good. Once we receive your $6,000 tuition check, she's in.
For Lisa Simpson, there doesn't appear to be a separate class for smart kids, so she has class with everyone else, and it's clear that the curriculum is not challenging for her. She does present high potential to succeed at the gifted school, but it's the lack of resources and scholarships that closes this opportunity for her. Even though she is smart, there aren't any scholarships available for her. A quick note about Maggie. While there are hints about her intelligence, my theory is that she's actually on the spectrum. If you would be interested in seeing a video about that, comment below. In the series Shameless, Lip also isn't separated into a class with the smart kids, though based on what's shown, the district is severely lacking in resources for all students. Lip does homework, tutors smart kids, and takes the SAT for other students for monetary gain, but gives little to no thought about investing in his own future. However, this is what gets him noticed, because as a professor tells him, he's one of the only students in America who earned a perfect score of 2,400. Again, he's noticed because he's a genius, not just smart. In Roseanne, Becky works to be at the top of the class. Unfortunately, she can't go to college. I don't think she's classified as a genius in the series, but feel free to comment if I missed that. Her family doesn't have the resources for her to go, and there doesn't seem to be scholarships. When she is in the reboot The Connors, we see her struggle with alcoholism and frustrations with how her life took the turn that it did, since she didn't continue her education.
The life you're supposed to have is you go to Harvard, and you earn every fellowship and internship they have. You graduate first in your class, and you start working in public service, either district attorney or running some foundation, and then you become governor of a mid-sized state, and then you become president.
What?
I'm sorry, Malcolm, but you don't get the easy path. You don't get to just have fun and be rich and live the life of luxury.
That's Dewey.
Really?
The last examples for this section are from Malcolm in the Middle. There are actually two geniuses in the family, but they are portrayed differently. One being the more traditional view of genius versus non-traditional. Malcolm is separated from many of his peers with other students that have high IQs. We see through the series that his socioeconomic background is probably the lowest in the group. However, he appears to have the highest IQ, as we see in the episode Emancipation. The new teacher ranks the students, and Malcolm consistently comes out on top. He is the stereotypical or traditional genius with math and science. On the other hand, Dewey is also a genius, but a little different than Malcolm and more non-traditional. His genius is more artistic, especially when it comes to music. When he goes to take the IQ test, his brothers sabotage him because Malcolm doesn't want to be in the same class. Through various events that happen, he ends up in the remedial class. Dewey grows to become an unspoken leader and often stands up for the other kids. The reason for the distinction between smart and genius is that there seems to be this underlying idea that you can't just be smart to successfully get out of poverty. You have to be a genius, and it helps even more if it's math or science. Being poor and smart may not necessarily be good enough. This leads into the next point of taking the right path. In the examples mentioned, when they are identified as a genius, they are pressured to follow a certain path. Except Dewey. That path is usually higher education or a job in the STEM fields, because it is perceived that this is how really smart people will fulfill their potential. Their happiness and well-being are an afterthought. If they pursue their academic interests now and put other things on the back burner, they can get that cushy job and then worry about their happiness in life. If they don't, they're wasting their talents and won't be happy. In Lisa's case, she might end up with Ralph or Milhouse.
Quit it! Quit it! Quit! You kids knock it off! Mama's watching her stories. Hi, honey. It's me, your husband, Ralph. Hey, Angel Pie. Can you drive me down to the library? I want to rent us up some movies. Wesley, get Mama's prying bar.
Apparently, if you're a genius, you still can't be trusted to know which choices to make in life. Add to that, there is this hidden responsibility that being a genius means it has to be shared, and that the person is required to contribute to society. Malcolm and Dewey are pushed towards different paths. Malcolm isn't just supposed to succeed, he's supposed to be president. It started out lower, but he kept raising the bar. Arguably, being president is a very demanding and exhaustive job that will take over his whole life, or as Lisa puts it, quote, "I will obsess over your welfare because I don't have a life," end quote. Does this mean that Malcolm is required to give up his life for the greater good? Conversely, since Dewey is more artistic, they don't appear to push him in the same way. The way that Lois's speech is worded at the end hints at Dewey possibly being part of a successful musical group. He did write an entire opera about a mattress before he was in high school. For Will, he can either pursue one of the opportunities that Lambeau presents him, or he can pursue a relationship with Skylar. I don't understand why these two things are mutually exclusive. If he has a job opportunity near where Skylar is going to school, why would he have to choose? Does this mean that Will entering one of these jobs takes away any time for an outside life? There's even a point where Lambeau and McGuire argue about Will's future like he doesn't really get a say in it, and that's messed up. If Will decides to take Lambeau up on one of the opportunities afforded to him, it's not going to magically solve all of his problems. Why does everyone else think they know what's best for Will after knowing him a short time? In the season 32 episode Mother and Child Reunion of The Simpsons, the family runs into Werner Herzog that gives another possible future for The Simpsons. There are other episodes with the same premise, but this heavily focused on Lisa choosing not to go to college. There's a quote from Grandpa that Lisa is the only worthwhile Simpson, and quote, "Our family's last remaining hope. I'm counting on you to find the cure for everything that's going to kill me. No pressure," end quote. Of course the pressure gets to her. I'm guessing we're ignoring a prior episode where we meet Homer's family and find out that the women are often highly educated.
Wait a minute, Homer. You didn't ask everybody. What about the women?
Fine. What do you do, Dr. Simpson?
Doctor?
That's right. I'm Chief of Complicated Surgery at the Invasive Care Clinic.
That means you went to college, right?
When Lisa talks with Bart, she vents many frustrations, such as the cost and whether or not a degree equates to success. She does get into every single college she applied for, but decides not to go to any. Marge tells her, quote, "Lisa, please, I'm giving you one last chance to salvage this day. I've lived for this moment, and all I've ever asked from you is that everything that never happened to me happens to you, and that justifies my existence on this earth for the hours I spent holding you, cleaning you, cooking your supper, drying your tears, catching your colds, and burying every personal need I had so I could have the brief joy of setting up your dorm room with the roommate from the fancy family who you'll spend the holidays with on their ranch in Colorado instead of coming home to me. Once and for all, which college are you going to?" End quote. Lisa just quietly responds that she's not going to any. First, the writers didn't give Marge much of a life outside of her family, so of course she's going to be upset when she worked hard and sacrifices for Lisa to have a chance that she didn't. Second, the entire day is based around Lisa's decision, and while it is disappointing to friends and family, that's a lot of pressure to put on one person. Third, because the writers focus so heavily on Marge being a stay-at-home mom, when she lists all of the things that she did to help Lisa, it speaks to how much we expect moms to give up. It's what's at the end of her speech that truly captures what makes this heartbreaking. Marge knows that if Lisa goes to college, she'll make those connections with higher-up families and start enjoying the type of life she won't get staying at home and not going to school. She understands that by sacrificing all these things, it's likely she will lose her daughter over time, and she's willing to accept that in order for Lisa to pursue a life that Marge genuinely thinks will make her happy. However, that doesn't mean that Lisa should just accept that sacrifice and do what her family wants. Lisa says, quote, "All my life, I did what I thought other people wanted me to do. Now I'm doing what I want. I'm burned out, so burned out, I just need some time to think," end quote. With all the pressure to go to college, it's easy to see how we might forget to think about what we actually want for the future. The resolution to this episode was crap, but it started with some promise. The pressure to succeed and follow a particular path can be detrimental to one's physical, emotional, and mental health, as we see in the Saved by the Bell episode, Jesse's Song. Let's look back at Lip. Fiona is constantly pushing all her siblings to do better academically, though it is arguable that there is more pressure on Lip. Even when it gets to the end of high school, Mandy is the one that submits his application for college. While on the surface it might be confusing to many as to why he wouldn't want to take the amazing opportunities afforded to him, I get it. If Lip succeeds and ends up at a high-paying job, unless he cuts off his family, there's an expectation that he will help them, because your success is our success. I don't think Fiona necessarily sees him this way. Lip is aware of this. In theory, he could pursue that, but as we see in a flashback with his dad, education takes a back seat to other decisions. In the 2019 article from Origins Behavioral Health, Why Are Intelligent People More Prone to Mental Illness?, having a higher IQ is connected with mental illness such as depression as well as substance abuse. Both Lip and his dad are alcoholics and have high intelligence. One possible reason for this connection is what's referred to as psychological overexcitability. Basically, those with higher IQs tend to ruminate and worry more. Lip certainly does that. Between him and Fiona, they are the two oldest kids and they are constantly under stress, working to ensure that the family is taken care of. Often those who are poor have to worry about the health of the entire community and helping others because no one else is going to. So when someone like Lip shows up, he has the high level of intelligence he is expected to help out more since he has a chance at opportunities the rest of the family probably won't. In the NPR story, Poor Are More Charitable Than Wealthy, Paul Piff from the University of California discussed a study looking at generosity between different socioeconomic classes. The lower class was 44% more willing to give away their points in the experiment, so while Fiona and her family might not be able to help monetarily as much as Lip potentially could, they do still have a community mindset when it comes to paying bills and taking care of the family. There are several articles that point out that he just didn't want to live up to his potential, but not much on why that would be. Just because he has this genius, is it fair to put all the pressure on one person to bring the family out of poverty? While he is smarter than his siblings, it's not as if the rest of them can't work or finish school either. With that, it leads to the next point of you failed because you didn't choose the right path. What's implicit in that statement is that everyone around you knew the correct path that you should have taken, but you didn't choose the right one. In this case, it's not your failure is our failure, it's your failure is yours alone. While we can only speculate about the future for some characters, we do know the outcomes for Lip and Becky. For Becky, not being able to attend college was a breaking point. With her parents trying to keep it together, she filled in for some of the parenting role when she was working to get into college, only to learn that the college fund that was there is now gone.
Do you have any idea what I'm going through? I mean, today may be the last day I'll ever see Mark again, okay?
Whoa, what are you talking about?
He got a job offer in Minneapolis, and I'm telling him to take it. And it's all because of you.
Excuse me?
If you knew how to run a business, he'd still have a job and he wouldn't be leaving. Now I don't have Mark, I don't have college, I don't have anything! You blew it, Dad! You blew it for everyone in this family!
She decides to elope with her boyfriend, and they move to Minneapolis. In the Connors, we find that Becky is now a widow and struggling to make ends meet. She later has her daughter Beverly Rose while working at the local restaurant. In Season 3, episode titled Money, Booze, and Lies, she decides to have dinner with a past classmate, Mike Withers. While he is now successful, Becky is not. This is one of the triggers for her, and when it's combined with the insecurity of her daughter now being more attached to Lupe than her, she relapses. When she is in therapy, it's revealed that Mark's death is still affecting her. She chose a different path than what her parents were pushing her towards, and she is angry at herself as well as Mark. Dan is upset as well, having never liked Mark to begin with because he took Becky down, quote, the wrong path. For Lip, he loses his rare opportunity at college. I won't argue that much of that is his own fault. He absolutely makes some poor decisions, and his alcoholism greatly affects his life. While he sabotages his life, he also tries to fix it. Lip attends AA meetings and works at a motorcycle shop. In some ways, the job at the motorcycle shop makes sense for his character. It's a physically and mentally demanding job. It may not involve theoretical physics, but in fixing bikes, he's problem solving and able to physically see the positive results of his efforts. I think this is why he doesn't care for academics. Since he has to survive day to day, academics might seem frivolous. His family has to work to survive constantly, and academics is not going to give an immediate reprieve. He sees his college classmates as greatly privileged, so yes, he might get that education, but for what? He's not guaranteed things will be easier, and it certainly won't happen quickly. However, since this is likely the only chance this will happen in his life, there is even more pressure to make certain decisions. People with lower incomes are judged more negatively when they make certain decisions. In the 2018 article, How Low Income Affects Routine Decisions, it's pointed out that while, quote, poor people actually make sensible decisions when buying groceries. For example, other research has found that during periods when money is scarce, people perform worse on measures of fluid intelligence, the ability to think abstractly, identify patterns and solve problems, and cognitive control. End quote. Essentially, the environment and conditions of being poor affect our decision-making, and it is not just a mindset. It's easy to be on the outside and think, Lip just needs to get his act together, or that Will just needs to get over his trauma and things will get better. Maybe. Higher education can help, but it's not a guarantee. We should also analyze why we push someone in poverty towards a certain path just because of a particular aptitude. Being smart or being a genius doesn't mean you owe anyone anything. If Lip was from a rich family, would he receive the same pressure as he does because he's poor now? What if Malcolm decides to drop out of college and start working as a logger? What if that is the path that makes him happy instead of being president? Is he more obligated to contribute to society? It's not fair to put all the pressure on one person. Lip is constantly told to live up to his potential as if he's the only one that will end up successful. The other siblings can graduate high school and find employment as well. They may not be able to work for NASA or MIT, but they certainly aren't incapable of any success. There's not even a guarantee that the genius will be the most successful in the family to begin with. Malcolm is a little different. The family does push him to work on his academics, but it isn't until the series finale that it's revealed they expect him to be president. Being smart doesn't mean that someone is less likely to burn out. Just because someone has a high IQ doesn't mean they are void of emotions or don't have their own dreams. We can encourage someone toward a particular path, but we shouldn't force it. Granting an opportunity to succeed shouldn't be an obligation that leads to automatic failure if it doesn't work out. Intelligence is just one facet of being human, and we shouldn't relegate someone to being defined so narrowly. The rags to riches fairy tale for those few is not going to solve poverty, and these types of stories can erase the underlying issues of poverty. The pressure to succeed can be intense, and we need to accept that we aren't owed someone's intelligence. We shouldn't punish someone for choosing a different path. Thanks so much for making it this far, and if you want to see more content or have suggestions, feel free to like, subscribe, comment, or visit Patreon. Until next time.